Good evening. It's 6:02. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of Manatee Springs City Council for August the 16th, 2022. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you all join me, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all. Thank you. Would the city clerk please call the roll?
City Council members Judith Chandler,
Present.
Julie Wolf is absent.
Like Julie is excused.
Yes. Natalie Johnson here. Nancy Fortune,
Present.
Michelle Weatherholt is absent, but
Michelle, I believe, is going to be a little bit
Right,
late. She'll
she's-
join us as soon as she can.
exactly. Mayor Pro Tem John Shada and Mayor John Graham.
Yes, present. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, the next item would be approval of the agenda, which council has, and I would like to just explain something before we get too far into this. We have 5 executive sessions planned for tonight. I know that's a lot. That's really extraordinary. And I don't mean to overwork council, but just to kind of explain, agendas begin sometimes months in advance, and as things mature, they become more permanent. But as we get items that require executive sessions, they kind of crop up like dandelions, and you have to address them quickly. So this agenda ballooned somewhat. I do think that it's possible that we could be into the executive session portion of the meeting by 8 o'clock, possibly even sooner than that. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda as written.
Moved by Councillor Chandler. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Fortune. Judy, how do you want us to vote? Electronically or by voice? Okay, we'll vote by voice. All in favor, say aye. Okay, thank you. And the agenda is approved. Okay, then we have, the next item is consent calendar. We have 3 items on our consent calendar for this evening. The first is approval of the regular, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Bounced off of public comment on non-agenda items. So this is the portion of the meeting where if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make comments about items that are not on the agenda, this would be your opportunity to do so. Do we have anyone who wants to speak to anything? Judy, have we received any emails or any interest? Okay. Apparently there's no interest in that tonight. Let's move on to the consent calendar. 3 items. First, approval of the city council regular meeting minutes for August the 2nd. Presentation of warrants written for July. An installation of public art on the Avenue Phase 2, visiting works, and the Iggy Igloo Memorial Mural. Unless a member of council wants to pull an item off, I'd entertain a motion to approve and accept.
I move
Consent.
to approve.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And second by Councillor Chandler. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, motion passes. The consent calendar is approved. Hearings. The public hearing and consideration of an application for a new beer and wine liquor license at 819 Manatee Avenue. Fryman LLC, doing business as Persephone, I hope I said the right, Gray's Cafe and Juice Bar applicant. And this will include a public hearing.
Mayor, if you can give me just a second, I'm trying to send the link to Julie Wolf, who's going to try and come in on this meeting.
Please,
So-
yes.
and this is my item, so.
I'll mention for the audience that staff's been experiencing some internet problems here in the last few days.
Okay, so I got that off to Councillor Wolf. So if you don't mind, if I can just present from here.
Yes, that'd be
Okay.
okay. So let me go ahead and I will open the public hearing. And our first item of business is the staff presentation by our city clerk, Judy Morgan, who's also our liquor licensing expert. Judy?
Yes, so this is, the applicant is Fryman LLC, doing business as Persephone Gray's Cafe and Juice Bar. The application was made on June 30th of this year for a new beer and wine liquor license to be located at 819 Manitou Avenue. A beer and wine license is a malt and vinous liquors for consumption on the premises, where sandwiches and light snacks are available for consumption on the premises during business hours, but need not have meals available for consumption. So that's some of the state statute on that. The application was submitted along with a diagram of premises. A proof of possession was provided. The location summary checked to be fine. The location has not been denied a liquor license for needs and desires within the past 2 years. It's not within the distance limitation of a school. And the Manitou Springs Police have not identified this general location as too dense with liquor licenses, that it will cause a law enforcement issue if this one is granted. The sales tax license was provided, it's a limited liability company, and those documents were provided. The background information was submitted, as well as the evidence of support and need. And for that support and need, there's a total of 31 signatures that were obtained on that petition. And the petition summary, which is what the applicant submits, stated that I found that Manitou residents are excited for a new location to enjoy homemade food, fresh juices, and craft drinks. We plan on offering a different atmosphere than some of the other restaurants in the area. Also, the outdoor patio is the only covered and raised above the street in Manitou, and we got a lot of positive feedback about sitting out there and having a glass of wine. The notice of public hearing, that was, the poster was put up on the premises on July 25th, and the legal notice was published in the newspaper on July 28th. These notices meet and exceed the 10-day standard in the liquor code. The applicant was sent a hearing notice on July 22nd. Background check was done on the applicant. He is 100% owner, and there was some history that came back on that. I did send out notice to all of council that if they wanted to see that, they could certainly do that. And I just stated on there, because there was history, there is also in the CRS wording that talks about the licensing authority shall consider evidence of rehabilitation. And so that's what I'm also asking is to look and see the dates that when the issues came up and then how many years have passed since then. So the obligation and authority of the liquor licensing authority, which is the council, is you're obligated to conduct a needs and desires hearing. So that's what we're doing today. And that means all city properties within 100 feet of the proposed location. And in Manitou, they've also included anybody else who lives in Manitou. Let's see, for the hearing, the statutory criteria that the authority will be concerned with throughout the hearing is the reasonable requirements of the neighbors and the desires of the adult inhabitants of that neighborhood with respect to the proposed business. The parties in interest is defined as being the applicant, adult residents of the neighborhood, and owners, managers of businesses located in the defined neighborhood. The Manitou Springs Liquor Licensing Authority has ruled that in addition to parties in interest as defined by liquor code, all Manitou Springs residents and or business owners shall be considered parties in interest and will be permitted to participate in this hearing. The posting and legal notice occurred as required, and that is part of my administrative report proving evidence of that. And as far as the parties in interest with those postings that went out, I to date have not received any comments from any parties of interest And so that concludes my report.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
And I'll just give council the opportunity if we have any clarifying questions in regard to what you just stated. No questions. Okay, let's move on then. The next portion of this will be the applicant's presentation. So I'd like to call the applicant forward. It was Lyman Anderson? Yes, sir. Please take the stand. You'll need to press the button and you'll see the green light will come on. Try to get within about 3 inches of the microphone. They're sensitive. So you'll make your presentation now. We will then have a period for public comment and you'll have a chance to come back and respond to any remarks or questions if such things happen. So
Absolutely.
you have the floor, sir.
Awesome. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you all for letting me be in front of you and plead my case out here, so to speak. This is a new experience for me, especially this one right here. We opened up the restaurant about 2 months ago. And at that point, we weren't necessarily even thinking of doing beer and wine, but I had found out that the people really wanted it, especially the locals. We obviously tourists are going to be amazing and necessary, but that's not what's going to get me through the winter, so to speak. So I found out through just talking to them that beer and wine would be an excellent option for gaining more traction to the locals staying, coming through and being with me throughout the winter, so to speak. I have been in Manatee for over 8 years. I was the kitchen manager and the general manager of the townhouse. Before that, I was one of the sous chefs of the Cliff House. Now that was 20 years ago. But I have been in Manatee for a long time. So I know a lot of the locals. I've even seen a couple of you around before. And I love this place and would just love to be a functioning and something that gives Manatee a little bit more. Like even right now, I've got local artwork in my restaurant right now that I'm selling for the local artists and not taking anything for it because I want to support the locals. We already supported the Manatoids pool team. We gave them some money to go to Vegas. Also, we're thinking of supporting or at least donating to the coffin races as well. We want to become a supporter of that too. But at that time, beer and wine would help for the coffin races, just to be totally honest. But beyond that, I have some business owners that are coming in to talk on my behalf and some local residents to talk on my behalf. And beyond that, I don't know what else I could offer to give you. I've got all the information you need if you guys have any questions.
Okay. Counsel, if you have any quick questions you'd like to ask now, or remind you that he will be back. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get on with public comment portion and you'll have a chance to come back. Thank you. And with that, I'll open the public comment portion of this public hearing. Any Manatee resident or business owner is welcome to come and make remarks. We'd ask that you keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Do we have anyone who would like to speak? Well, please come forward. Yeah, please come up. No, please come up to the microphone, take a seat. And again, press the button, the green light will come on. Try to get within about 3 inches of the microphone. We need your name and address, please.
My name is Nancy Kowalski. I live at 145 Ruxton Ave. I have lived in Manatee since 2000.
Please stay close to the microphone. Yeah, this is all being recorded.
Okay. My name is Nancy Kowalski. I live at 145 Ruxton Ave. I have lived in Manatee since 2010, a Colorado Springs resident since the early 70s. My father was in the military. I have known Lyman for a long time. I respect him. I think he is an excellent person, excellent personality, a businessman, and I think he will do very well. Also, I have been given permission to speak for Jessie Cormany, who owns Old Town Photography and has several properties here. And she is also in support of Lyman. So I just want to say that I do believe that he is an asset to this community, and I think he will do a fine job.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have anyone else? Sir, please come forward.
Evening. Name's Craig Miller. I live at 840 Prospect Place. My family has been here since 1935. So we've been involved with the city for quite a while. Lyman is another one of the guys that I've met along the times, and he is one of the best guys, one of the smart guys I know, one of the best cooks I know. Him going into the Barker House was a great thing. That space was poorly taken care of by the previous owners. The managers at the Barker House are been great friends to him, work with him very closely on making sure that place is up to date and running perfectly. And he makes sure that the residents there understand everything that's going on at all times. Also, just in general, because him being at the townhouse and knowing everybody there and being friends with everybody else in town, he's probably a great asset to have in these spaces at all times. So liquor license, all it's doing is giving more revenue to the city. He's not going to be staying open too late at night till later on down the road till he can economically do that. So, but yeah, for his little area right there, right on the avenue, great aspect to have. So appreciate it. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. We have anyone else? Okay. Sure, there's no one else in anyone online or anything like that? Okay, all right. In that case, I will go ahead and let's bring the applicant back. Mr. Anderson, okay. Council, this is our opportunity to ask questions or seek clarification from Mr. Anderson. Do we have any questions? Sorry to bring you up here. It appears that the packet was pretty thorough. I mean, that was.
And I will say something that he said that I did not say, Craig, a good friend of mine, which I appreciate. I am not planning on staying open like bars. This is the latest we do plan. I'm a family man, is 8 o'clock maybe, but I don't even want to stay open that late. I mean, I'm thinking 6 or 7. So I just want you to know this isn't going to be a 2 o'clock in the morning, rowdy people, waking people up, loud music kind of situation. Much more calm, red wine, nice craft beers, in good ambiance kind of thing. Good vibes, laid back kind of thing. So I just wanted to state that because I did not say that, I can understand if I was like, we're going to stay open until 2:30 in the morning playing music all night. That might not sound great, but we're not planning on doing that at all. This is just to help boost public interest and create a little bit more revenue.
Okay, I think that's a helpful addition. With that, council, last call. If you have questions for Mr. Anderson? Apparently not. Thank you.
Yeah, no
Take your
problem.
seat, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Certainly. Judy, we're back to the staff. Do you have anything that you want to add or need to add?
I do not. I
Coun-
just make sure that we close the public hearing at some
Right.
point.
I will.
Thank you.
Council, do we have any questions for Judy? Okay. There being none, apparently, I will close the public hearing and we'll move into deliberation. Council, what's your pleasure? Nancy? Go ahead.
Okay, I move that we approve a new beer and wine liquor license to applicant Fryman LLC DBA Persephone Grace Cafe and Juice Bar located 819 Manatee Avenue, Manatee Springs, Colorado 80829. I think it's a wonderful addition.
I second.
We have a second by Councilor Wilderholt. Okay, any further discussion, council? Judy, do you want us to vote electronically? Okay, let's give Judy a chance and then we'll. Oh, sorry. Okay, council, let's go ahead and vote. And we'll need to record Julie's vote, I guess verbally. Julie, can you hear me? Counselor Wolf, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you, John. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So did you hear the motion to approve the liquor license request? How
I
do you vote?
did, but I missed the beginning of the presentation, so I don't know if it's appropriate for me to vote since I didn't really hear everything.
Okay. Okay, so you're going to abstain then?
I'll abstain, just because I didn't hear the entire presentation.
That's generally the
That's-
better approach. much. We're not party to the entire hearing. So.
Okay, thank you. Julie, did you hear what Mr. Parker said?
No.
He thinks an abstention is the best course in this case.
I asked for an extension,
Abstention.
abstention. Okay,
Yeah, okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
So we have a 6-0 to 1 vote in favor. 6 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 1 abstention.
Abstention. Okay, so the motion passes. The liquor license is approved. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck. No, we understand. Believe us, we understand. Okay. Well, with that concluded, let's go ahead. We have a presentation. This is the Hiawatha Gardens bi-monthly presentation. We have our city engineer, Dole Grabenick, to lead that, joined by Susan Watkins.
Good evening, council. I'm Dole Grabenick, city engineer from Manatee Springs. As the mayor mentioned, we're here to provide an update on the progress of the Hiawatha Gardens Task Force and the work we've done thus far and kind of where we're going to be going in the future. I wish I had someone cheer for me like that just happened. That'd be great. Judy, thank you. So tonight we're going to go over what occurred. We had on July 11th, we had a public engagement event right here in this room. We're going to kind of go over briefly kind of how that went, some of the key points that emerged from that. We'll go over the responses and then a description of our next steps of what to expect from us in the future.
As Dole said, we had a community meeting on July 11th. It was both in person and Zoom meeting as well. So we had about 30 participants in the meeting. As Dole said, our purpose was to review the responses that we've received so far in development of a plan for Hiawatha Gardens, just to recap those and how they directly tie into what was contained in the draft preferred plan, and present the plan itself and then solicit responses. Next slide, please. So the meeting agenda was pretty straightforward. Again, we recapped the community engagement process and the responses, presented the draft preferred plan, answered questions about the plan. And then we asked small groups at their tables to discuss 3 questions, which I'll cover with you in a minute, in response to the plan, so that each person could hear multiple perspectives about the plan rather than just assume everybody thinks like he or she thought. They could hear what their neighbors thought about the plan as well. After the short discussion, then everybody filled out an individual response form in response to those 3 questions. And then we told them what comes next in the project. So Dole's going to go over the draft plan with you.
Thank you. And I also do want to highlight real quick that tonight is really just, again, an update. We're not looking for an approval right now. We just want to kind of give you an update of where the draft preferred plan sits right now, some of the key elements. You know, a lot of the details have not been identified yet. But really what us working towards this goal allows us to do is it then allows us to kind of, you know, rule out the things that we can agree on and then focus on future details and that in the future. So this is the drawing. This is basically what we are calling our draft preferred plan. This should not be new to anyone, but this does represent basically bathrooms to the north on the side. That's kind of the little T section on the north there. There's a plaza to the west, and then there are large bathrooms. There are bathrooms on the west side of the building that would be accessible from the parking lot. And then it includes a potential office, and then it includes a green room in that, I'll just call it the T extension. Here you'll see some architectural renderings. These are basically just kind of drawings of what the site could look like if it's built out. And again, this is kind of what our architect rendered up. Some of the details and colors and textures are just drawn in there for aesthetic, knowing that a lot of those things still need to be determined. Really what this effort was about was entrances, exits, layouts, bathrooms, plazas, mobility areas, things like that. That's really the areas we were focusing on. Next slide, thank you. And then this again is just a rendering. But you can see some of the ideas of what a nice large plaza might look like, how it could be used by people. Some of the landscaping, the windows, the colors, the textures, again, need to still be determined. Some of the bike hub and mobility areas are still to be determined. But it kind of gives an idea of what the space could look like if you were standing on Old Man's Trail looking at the site, what this building could look like. And I will highlight, because we have received a lot of positive feedback. Right on the right side of the screen, to the right of the screen is where the creek is. And we actually opened up that area, kept the existing roof line, and made it kind of an outdoor indoor space that people could potentially be outside, enjoy the creek. And that was probably, if I can speak on behalf, that we just received like an overwhelming positive response about, was to kind of have that indoor outdoor creek accessible creek view shed experience. I already highlighted a couple of these details, but this kind of shows how the floor plan could actually be laid out. You can see the total square footage of the whole building, 8,200 square feet. And then about half of that would be the dance hall event space. The max occupancy of something this size per the code is 720. And then the example we shown there to the left shows what the space could be used as, how it could be spaced. If we had 150 seats, and then down to the south again is that creek view shed area, and that's 20 patio seats. And then the code requires 82 parking spaces for a 720 occupancy building use. And then just to highlight again on the right side, there's a potential for an office. There's 2 bathrooms in the middle. There is a green room just to the left. And when we say green room, we mean like a kind of utility. No, that's not the right word. An event prep room maybe is a better word for it. We spoke with Megan, our events coordinator here in Manatee, and we kind of asked her questions about how spaces get used. And she said that one of the biggest things that she get asked for the most from so many special or private events is a room for prep. So you could think about a room that a band could get prepped in. You could think about a room that a bride could get prepped in. You could think about a room, I mean, anybody could just have a little moment to themselves before they were to come out and do some sort of an event. So this layout accommodates that request.
We ask workshop participants 3 questions. Everybody was asked to answer these questions. What do you particularly like about the draft preferred plan, and why? We ask why because we want to know people's thinking behind their responses so that we make sure we understand their reasoning. We also ask, is there any element of the plan that you have really serious concerns about, and why are you concerned? And then given the financial constraints, it's likely that this project will need to be phased in. And so we wanted to know what people's priorities were. What would they like in the first phase, the last phase? So those were the questions we posed to everyone. Next slide, please. People really, really liked the plan itself, which we found really interesting. And the reason they said they liked it, about 45% of the responses said they liked the plan. People said they liked the balance of uses and the variety of elements in the plan and how they all work together. They also mentioned that they thought it was great that the task force listened to the prior responses that we've gotten from the community, and that the plan reflects what the community has told us. So we felt good about that. As Dole said, the plaza was a very, very popular element of the plan. People see it as a gathering area and they see it as an amenity that will build community. The connection to the creek also, which is highlighted by the building design, as Dole pointed out. There's a patio in the back. There's great view sheds of the creek, and so that's important to people. The next big priority for people was landscaping. This is Manatee. You can't have enough trees and you can't have enough vegetation, and that's what we heard. So it's consistent. As far as, and then there were other things mentioned less frequently, restrooms, building capacity, saving the historic building was mentioned as a positive, and then focus on multi-mobility. Next slide, please. When it came to what people were concerned about, there were 4 big topics. As I mentioned, you can't have enough landscaping in Manatee Springs, and people said that was a concern. We need more landscaping, we need more trees, more drought tolerance plants, and we need to try to offset through greenery the heat that comes from the parking lot. Parking was also a concern. Some people said we need to have less parking on this site to allow for other uses on this site. Others said, more tourism parking is great. Others said, how is this project going to impact parking in Manatee Springs when we already have parking concerns? The other top concern was building capacity. As Dole said, the maximum capacity called for at this point is 720. Some people thought that was out of sync with the parking situation. Is that realistic given our parking constraints? Others expressed concern about, are all these people going to be locals or are they going to be tourists? So people had questions as well. A big concern, particularly from neighborhood folks, was traffic flow. People wanted to know if the city has done a traffic study to study how the entrances and exits from this project are going to work. They were concerned about impacts on the neighborhood, on the adjacent neighborhoods. And also El Paso Boulevard has been identified as sort of an alternative to Manatee Avenue as a safe way for multimodal users to get in and out of the city. So there was concern about potential conflicts with that. Other concerns were the site design. A few people were concerned about runoff to the creek. One person commented that the plan didn't have a lot of excitement. Other concerns were public safety with all of the cars and the various multimodal users interacting with each other, and a few mentions about building design and restrooms. Okay, next slide, please. And then what would you like to see first? Overwhelmingly, it was restrooms. People want to get rid of the portables. They say there are a lot of multiple users who need restrooms, and so that's what they'd like to see built first. Mobility elements, people are supportive of a local mobility hub, and I think they're eager to get going with offering multimodal options. Some said, let's do the dance hall building first. We want to start using it, and historic grants are probably likely available soon, so let's go with that. Others, again, really like the plaza, and they'd like to start with that. But almost 30% of the people said, let's build the restrooms first. So there was a pretty clear direction there of what priorities are for people. Next slide, please. So all of what I've covered with you tonight was in your council packet. We prepared a report that has both the verbatims, every single comment received, every word received was documented. Also, we prepared a summary that quantifies the responses, which you just saw. So task force members, as we have all along, will take a good hard look at all of these responses. And those responses, as they have throughout this process, will drive the next product. It's just a series of, here are community priorities, so here's what goes in the plan, and we intend to continue to do that. Also, the report has been posted on the city website, so the public can review it as well.
You have a question?
No, thank you, Susan. I guess back to you, Dole.
Yes, sir. So moving on, what are our next steps with this? We've kind of been talking in the past up till now. And, we had originally talked about trying to potentially start construction on bathrooms, mobility elements, perhaps as early 2023. Of course, that's contingent on funding and any other actions that could impact Hiawatha. There is a potential acquisition that could also affect the layout of Hiawatha, so that has to be factored into the future layout and conceptions. And then but that may not necessarily impact the bathrooms per se, or it could. So right now, we are kind of looking to understand how that acquisition could impact the project. Susan, I might let you hit that first one.
Okay, next thing we're gonna do to involve the community is to host a charrette involving the task force and community members to really generate creative ideas regarding the plaza and other design elements. We'd like this project to really reflect the Manatee Springs character. And so that's what we're working toward, and we want to get people involved even more with that. We're continuing to coordinate with the State Historic Preservation Office and History Colorado. And certainly we'll be going to them for grants. We think we have a pretty good chance of getting some grants. Dole, I'm going to bounce this back to you because I know nothing about mechanicals.
Right. So, and really, I think the thing to take from these last couple of things here is that regardless of what happens at the site, there are a couple of things that will be needed. And I say regardless of what happens, regardless of the final design, the final layout, there are some fundamental things that you always need when you go to do a building construction and renovation like this. So we're planning to go ahead and proceed with a topographical site survey, right-of-way delineation, a geotechnical analysis, and then also look and understand how we sit within the floodplain. Fortunately, the fourth one is pretty well documented. The area has been zoned AE, which means it's a 100-year and 500-year flood map is available. But we want to go ahead and get that stuff started. It takes a little bit of time, but then as we get the geotech report and the survey, then the design for the selected elements, I'll just call it the draft preferred plan for right now, can not then have to wait for some of that stuff to catch up to it. So by doing some of these early action items, we kind of start that critical path schedule, get some of those things started that'll be needed regardless. And then when the decision's finally made of the site layout, locations, all the critical engineering information is available, and the process/project can then start. Questions?
Okay. Council, questions for our presenters? Judith?
Thank you, Mayor. I think you've done generally a really awesome job. I am really a fan of starting with the bathrooms, not the least of which is because of what the city pays for those porta potties. But I think that's a really great start. I didn't even realize until the packet, I've seen this poster so many times, and the layout kind of looks like the poster that the old poster where it says "Where dancing is entrancing." My only comment on the parking, and I will say it again, I was probably an N of 1, was because it's in a floodplain. I was not thrilled about how it was striped because in my personal opinion, that's if we were to have a flood, especially flood waters coming down from 24, the way the parking lot is striped would really enhance that water running off right into Fountain Creek. Whereas if the parking was turned and there were bioswales, there's many ways to engineer really dealing with floodwaters. That said, I did express that already, just a chance to do that again. I only have one question, and that is, so it's my understanding that the building will be wrapped with some local art. And I was curious about if you have a sense of when that might happen, the cost of that, and where the funding source would come from.
While Becca's walking up, I can address your parking alignment question. And the comment was that the way it's drawn now, the swales are running north-south and are kind of, we did look at running them east-west. And we couldn't get the parking lot to circulate doing that. And so if we did have it run east-west, we would have all these dead ends in the parking lot. And as a city, we don't want that. It causes poor circulation. So we did model it. And we're happy to share it with you, but it didn't, the parking lot operation just didn't work. Becca.
Yes, hi. So Becca Sickbert, I'm with the Creative Alliance Manatee Springs. We're at 441 Manitou Avenue. My home address, 1821 West Bijou. In response to the artwork going up on the west face of Hiawatha Gardens, we're anticipating that will be installed the first week of October as part of Arts Month. And so the call for artists will be going out. This took some time as we were not entirely sure how to address the new zip system. So given that we want to honor the wise choices of this team, we'll be priming the system in place and painting over it. So not wrapping it in vinyl, but painting over the top. Thank you for your question.
Funding, Becca.
Oh, yes, thank you, funding. So as you may recall, we had written a match grant. I'm happy to report it is fully funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. Council, other questions? Okay, I guess we've got a couple of comments. We started off with this as trying to solve a parking problem. And now I see looking at the plaza, it looks neat. I mean, it's attractive. I can see the popularity of it, but I also realized that costs some parking places. So are we, do we have such a big appetite that we're trying to make a community space, which is desirable, but giving up parking and thereby causing ourselves more problems? And we've got 3 public parks in that area. I mean, Memorial, Mansions, and 7 Minute Springs. 7 Minute Springs Park does have not only a plaza, but an amphitheater. So I question, although the plaza looks nice, do we really need it? What would be again, I think it's somewhere in that the packet information, there's still a number of ideas as to what the Hiawatha Gardens would be used for as an event center. I mean, and it could be a lot of things. It could be a place for potlucks, for weddings, for special events. Instead of putting up a tent in the park, we could do our marathon spaghetti dinners there. I get that. But I guess I would like in the future to see a little more definition as to what those things might cost if we begin to get sort of a feel for will this bring in some revenue, or how much would it need to be subsidized, that kind of thing. I don't think we can expect it to be a profit center by any means, but again, getting a sense of what the financial future would look like would be helpful. Council, anything else? I'm sorry, Dole.
So like how that space could be rented, how it could generate potential income, event revenue type thing?
Well, yeah, that'd be the thought. And I mean, I don't really know how realistic it is. I know we've got like Briarhurst down the street and Craftwood Inn, or they do events. I think probably they're in a different price point on the services they provide. So maybe we'd be the less expensive and hence more popular. I'd like to see a little more discussion on that. I think that's reasonable, that and the taxpayers deserve that kind of an explanation. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that we'll be able to make some guesses and some estimations on that. And the reason why is because when we did meet with Megan, we looked at what this space, Memorial Hall, does as far as rental, and then the demand, and and then how many times she has to say it's already booked, what kind of need there is out there, the rates. And we've also met with the event manager up at Woodland Park. They have an event space, and so we've learned from her about how much that gets used and type of revenue it can generate. We live in a beautiful city that has really high demand for event space, And a lot of people love to come and use this. And the words were because it was affordable and it's nice and it's by the creek. And so I think that there is big demand for community space, event space. And so I think we could try, as long as you know there will be an asterisk by it, that this is an estimate, we could try to estimate what we think it could do. Now, of course, knowing that it potentially would have limited windows, it couldn't use an event space during Labor Day weekend because of event. It can't be used during the marathon because the city's bit, we already have to black out some key dates, but we could try.
Right. Okay. And also, and I think this was kind of alluded to, in one of the slides there, it puts like a maximum attendance at 920. And then it said minimum 429. I'm not sure how that number came up. Elsewhere, it says, 720. But let's just take the 920 high and the 429 minimum. Midpoint on that is about 675. If you had 675 people there and 136 parking places, you'd have to have about 5 attendees per car to use the parking place. And that doesn't allow for support staff or vehicles for providing support. Now, maybe, during the slow time of year, people would be parking around Memorial Park and elsewhere. So, it'd be possible to accommodate that many people, but I think it makes sense to look at those numbers too. Make sure that we have some sort of rational balance. Can you imagine getting there for your daughter's wedding, find out you don't have a place to park and you got to walk her down the aisle in 5 minutes? That's just okay. Anyway.
Yeah, and hopefully no father of the bride is showing up 5 minutes before the wedding. But to your point, and really what we're presenting are what the maximum and what the code allows. I think it could be very reasonable if when the layout gets determined, there could be a max occupancy posted at the building. And that could be the guidance that is used for events at the space. It could be artificially lower than what the max building would allow based on what was determined was feasible for that parking lot. Because to your point, assuming 136 cars show up and find a spot, it's assuming that there's no one else in that spot at the exact same time. So I think that as we move along in this process and we, agree on some of these layouts and concepts, if it was determined that we wanted to lower the max capacity or even have max capacities vary different parts of the day, different days of the week, absolutely that'd be possible.
Okay, I think that kind of a sliding scale idea has a certain appeal, at least to me. So, okay.
And we control that through the booking and scheduling. And when they call to schedule, organize, we say, no, at Saturday at 11 o'clock, you can have 20 people, but Tuesday at 7 o'clock, you can have 150. Whatever the numbers, whatever the system allows, which is reasonable and functional for that space, I think you could absolutely control it that way if that was determined.
Okay, thank you. Council, any further questions or comments? Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, our next item of business is the Police and Fire Department compensation study. This was something council had asked for. It follows on from the compensation study we did for other city employees. So we have Kelly here for that. Thank you all.
Good evening. As you stated, Mayor, the compensation survey has been completed for the sworn police and fire departments. And I'm going to turn it over to Bob from Public Sector Personnel, and he'll go through the survey with you.
Perfect. Can everybody hear me okay? We did a little sound check beforehand, but is everything still good?
I wouldn't say it's great, but I think we can all pretty much understand you. Anybody having real difficulty?
Okay. I will take your advice and lean closer to the microphone and make sure I speak loud enough.
I think that helps.
Okay, perfect. You got it. So again, it's good to be back. Thanks for your time tonight. I know you guys have a busy agenda, so I want to kind of present the results here and walk you through the results of the salary survey for public safety. Should be a little bit of a repeat of what we've done. We tried to apply the same rules, the same methodology, the same structure that we did for the general employees, but yet acknowledging that these are slightly different jobs that have a different unique flavor to them. So we started by going out and looking at the market, getting the job descriptions and the org charts and the salary schedules from the various organizations that were in the study previously, while noting that many of these organizations had, for example, like a volunteer fire department and flat rates and just some uniquenesses that were brought into the study that didn't exist in the previous study simply by the nature of the organizations. Also, a couple of the cities that were in the comparator study for the general employees, they had like a special fire district instead of having the fire department as part of the city. So there were just some nuances there that I wanted to acknowledge and kind of bring up. So the comparator list organizations didn't match perfectly, but we tried to honor the intent of the original study with the comparators that we had in the survey. So much like with the city employees, when we start to look through and to go to say, every organization has a salary range. Everybody's got a salary range minimum and a salary range maximum. Just like we did before, we looked right down the middle at the salary range midpoint, and we say, how does your salary midpoint align with the market midpoints? And what are those market rates? Couple thoughts here on this slide. You tend to be further behind market as you increase responsibility and as you move higher up the ranks. So we were further behind market at the higher ranks, both in police and fire. Also, that's not to say that we were necessarily competitive at the lower ranges. We got to adjust some of those a little bit. But in our opinion, those ranges didn't need to move as hot as much as some of the higher ranks needed to move based on the survey. A couple other thoughts here. As we looked through these, I know there was a question about time in job, years of experience, and some of those thoughts. So maybe an over easy way to look at this is as you start to move up the ranks, out in the market, the minimum requirements in the job description tend to jump about 5 years per rank. That's if we look at this just based on the minimum requirements on the job description. Now, most employees don't actually move through those ranks that fast. We'll talk about that here in a minute. For example, I think the minimum requirements out in the market and for fire captain is somewhere in the 10 years of experience, but most of them have north of 15 by the time they're getting into those ranks. And I think one of your employees has close to 30. So when I looked at the average years of experience that your employees have, every rank of your employees has a higher average experience than the minimum requirements out there in the market for that rank. So another way to say this is all of your employees on average can qualify for the jobs out in the market of the rank above them. So we have some decent tenure at the organization. We have some decent years in the job and we have some decent experience, but maybe that's a helpful way to think about it. By the time we're starting to talk about fire captain and police lieutenant, we're talking about people that have north of 10 to 15 years of public service under their belts at that point in time. So a way to look through that is kind of that ladder or that step as you go up the ranks. The employees tend to move slower than the minimum requirements on the job descriptions, just kind of nationally on average through that. But like I said, we want to follow the same general guidance that we did for everybody. So we have the newly implemented salary schedule that we have for all of the city employees. And we're recommending placing all of public safety onto that salary schedule so that all city employees are on the same schedule. And we have the same parity, we have the same rules, we have the same requirements. We kind of have the same guidelines for all of the city employees as we move through the salary schedule. So like we did before, what's the market going rate at midpoint? What range do we have for that job? So if you remember our salary schedule and that exercise we went before, we have a bunch of different options of where to place these jobs, and we use market and we use internal equity to place those employees onto that job and on into that salary range. From there, we make sure the employees are above the minimum of their new range, and then we move employees through that new range based on time and job. And just like we did for everybody else, we put a cap on that. So we say we will move you up to $6,000 of an increase through that new range. So just those same cost controls, same rules we used for everybody. And so ultimately what that looks like is new salary range placements for police and fire to put them onto the salary schedule of the city. So if you remember, again, in the existing salary schedule, we have 5% between ranges. So if we look here, kind of the difference between a firefighter EMT and a firefighter paramedic job title, there's a 5% between ranges. We have 3 ranges, so it's a 15% increase. And as you go through those ranges. So just following along with that same general philosophy we used everywhere else, we want to balance market. We also want to make sure we incentivize employees to take on the additional responsibility, the additional rank, the additional stressors that a lot of times come from being in command in those paramilitary organizations and structures. So following that, kind of saying, hey, what's the nearest range based on market? Where are they now? Where do we want them to be? Moving those jobs onto the new salary schedule. And then finally, we have to move the employees through those ranges. So it's that last piece. We're making sure everybody's above minimum. And here's the nice thing. Maybe one of the ways to say this and talk about it is a little bit like the study we did for the general employees. I think you're more behind on paper than on payroll. When we put employees' actual salaries back into this exercise, none of them fell below minimum of the new proposed ranges. So we were moving our employees, but we have a couple employees that we need to move a little bit faster than where they would fall. So if we follow all the same rules, it looks like we need to spend about $18,000 on the increases to employees in fire and about $23,000 for employees in the police department, for a total of $40,701 in annual salary increases for public safety to move on to the new salary schedule, then move employees through their new range based on time and job with the city. And then also just to note, these are prorated based on the hours employees worked. We have a lot of employees who work, 90, 120 hours, 220 hours in the fire department, a lot of part-time employees. So those are prorated at that part-time rate for annualization purposes. So any questions there? Those are kind of the prepared structure we had for today. Wanted to make sure I save some time for some questions and any questions you have.
Counsel, questions? Julie, do you have any questions? Julie, can you hear us?
Oh, I have no questions. Thank you. I had to just unmute myself.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Mr. Shady, you had, if I remember correctly, back when we had one of our strategy sessions or day-long sessions, you had, I think, been one of the advocates for the compensation study. Do you have thoughts you'd like to share with us? Good. Could you turn on your?
No, I'm happy we're making these adjustments.
Okay. Not anything from council. I guess we have both our police and our fire chiefs here. Gentlemen, you have the opportunity to say anything to this if you care to do so. Chief Forsett, Chief Otto, you guys are just smiling. It must be. Let's do this alphabetically. Chief Forsyth. Fire becomes for police, Forsyth becomes auto. So John, do you have anything? John, could I ask you to come up to the microphone, please?
So obviously, we were part of the meetings coming up to the proposal that's before you now. So we did have some insight into this. I don't think I'd be worth the salt as a supervisor for my folks if I didn't say that compensation is very important and that we would want to move forward with any compensation package that brings them in line with market around us. It's a pleasure for me to hear that these folks usually exhibit experience beyond their rank and years and experience. I think that's important to note because these folks don't have opportunity to progress like they do in other agencies, other municipalities, because there's just not the volume of rank positions for them to move up the ladder into. So it's nice to know that, especially in my department, that we have the tenure that we do and that longevity. To that point, it was always my hope that we support these folks in a compensation package that does recognize that longevity. I'm not entirely clear how that works yet. I didn't get that explained to me yet. So hopefully down the road we can do that. Also, the package before you, we still need to include a couple job titles, which I know I'm going to have to work with Kelly on to include those job titles to ensure that we're covering folks not only in the EMS transport area, but there's other opportunities for rank that need to be investigated, not investigated, but implemented. Because whereas right now we don't have a lieutenant who's also a paramedic, it could be just a matter of months maybe before we had a lieutenant who's also a paramedic, and that's not identified in this compensation package, but that's also understandable, but something we can work with Kelly, I hope, in the future, and Bob.
Good, thank you. Any questions for Chief Forsyth? Thank you, Chief. Chief Otto.
Good evening. Chief Forsyth, I'm pretty much in line with his thinking. To have the opportunity for our people, our officers to advance with pay is fantastic. They don't have that now. That's the only way we're going to be able to keep them here long term. We've created a few things in the PD to get some movement going with some promotions. We've developed a couple different ranks that benefit the PD, I think, in it greatly. As far as the officers, the line level officers, there still is not a whole lot of room for movement. We just don't have the positions. We don't have the manpower. By giving an increase in pay, incentivizes them to stay here. It does. It helps. I noticed as well on Bob's stuff up there, we don't have the corporal rank on there. Did I miss that? Okay. Okay. So yeah, I think it's definitely a great step, and we're going in the right way. Hopefully it'll help keep people here longer instead of, I know I've talked about this many times before, but 3 or 4 years and now looking for somewhere else to go. Our officers generally love working in Manatee. This helps keep them here.
Great, thank you. Counsel, any questions for Chief Otto? Okay, thanks, Chief. Okay. Do we have any questions for Kelly? Okay, so Denise, excuse me, Judith?
Not really a question, just a comment. First of all, I'm really grateful that this salary study was done. I am a big proponent for our police and fire being in market. And I'm actually grateful. I thought this was gonna be higher, to tell you the truth. I'm really pleased. You know, considering what it costs to recruit and hire and retain really good people, I'm absolutely supportive of the conclusions of this study and the $40,701 in annual salary increases. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, questions from council? If not, well, the requested action in the packet is to approve this. So I guess time to entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the findings in the fire department compensation study.
The motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Counselor Johnson. Any further discussion? And Judy, I think we'll vote electronically. And Julie, did you hear that? We're going to vote on the compensation package?
And
Oh,
Mayor
thank you,
Pro-
John. I'm just going to listen as a non-participant for this part. I'm not really focusing enough to vote one way or the other.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, in that case, I think we're ready to vote. Let's all vote. Excuse me.
If
Well, I'm
Kelly
sorry,
wanted to make a
Kelly.
comment.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make a comment when Judith stated that she wanted to make the motion. I only heard the fire department. This is for both departments.
This is for both departments,
Okay.
including the annual salary increases.
okay, and just to be clear, that was your understanding, right?
Yeah, I
Natalie?
accept that.
Okay, so the motion is for both the fire and the police departments, the compensation study as presented. That said, let's go ahead and vote.
We have a 6-0 vote in favor.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly. Chief Forsyth, Chief Otto, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, moving right along. Next item is grant applications for City Hall renovation and new water storage tank authorizations. We'll have our planning department for that.
Good evening. My name is Chelsea Stromberg. I'm the new senior planner for the city. I'm here tonight to request permission to apply for two grants from the Department of Local Affairs. The first grant is for the construction of a new water tank, for which we'll be requesting $750,000. That water tank is to hold treated water while the current tank is taken offline for maintenance. The second grant is for the City Hall remodel. This grant we will be applying for $200,000 and includes remodeling the planning and parking offices and also includes stabilizing the southwest corner of the police station. That work alone is currently expected to be approximately $20,000. However, that could change once exploratory work begins. Seeking additional funding from the state will help ensure that all components of that project are funded. Both projects, the remodel and the water tank, are currently funded and identified in the capital improvement plan. And applying for these grants would leverage those already allocated funds to bring in additional funding from the state. The grant application explicitly requests that the date of council action to authorize the applications be included. Without council approval, we cannot apply for these grants. The applications are due on August 31st. So this is kind of the last chance we have to approve this item. I'd be happy to expand on either of these projects if you have any questions.
Council, any questions? I think we have a pretty clear understanding of what it's like to apply for a grant and the need to get one and the urgency. Would someone like to make a motion to approve? Nancy?
I move to approve grant applications to the City Hall remodel and police station stabilization, as well as the construction of a new water storage tank.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Natalie. Okay, any further discussion? Let's get ready to vote. Julie, are you going to vote on this? She left, okay. All right, so we'll vote electronically.
6-0 in favor.
Great, great. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Super. Council, thank you very much. I appreciate you moving expeditiously through tonight's agenda. So it's time to receive or act on council correspondence. Does anyone have anything? Nancy?
Yeah, I put at everybody's place a flyer for ranked choice voting. The League of Women Voters is having a forum on September 17th at Penrose Library at 1 o'clock on ranked choice voting, which is a potential new way of tallying votes for candidates. It's not been adopted in Colorado, but it's of interest to a number of people. Additionally, the league is trying to get elected officials to serve on the panel that day. They're looking for 5 to 7 elected officials. And on the other page that at the top, it says understanding ranked choice voting. It gives directions on if you'd like to serve on that panel to contact Christine Hembry of the league. And it's got her phone number and she needs to know by by August 24th next week. So it's an exciting opportunity either to go to the event or to participate as a panelist on the event. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Judith?
Just one item. I just wanted to point out that the Colorado Municipal League is hosting a webinar on September 15th. It's from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the reason I'm bringing this up, I do have it penciled in on my calendar, and I hope I don't have a schedule conflict because it's devoted to bids, GDAs and URAs, everything you want to know about that. It was in that CML, email that you got, but I just noticed it and I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalie?
I just want credit for participating in the 15-hour opioid conference for the last 2 days. I do have some notes I can share with you all later.
Did you need a painkiller to get through those 15 hours? The irony of the whole thing. Good. Well, thank you for doing that. Thank you for representing the city. Let's see. I need to run a question past you all. We have tentatively, we have planned to use October 1st, which is a Saturday, and the following Saturday, October the 8th, as 2 budget retreat sessions, going from 9 to 1 p.m. What's perhaps interesting on this, October the 9th, that the next day, Sunday, is, for Manatee's purposes, it's Indigenous Peoples Day. I've been dealing with some Native groups, and the Utes are actually interested in doing something on Saturday, and it could include riding horseback down the old Ute Indian Trail in their regalia. They would want to do that on Saturday, and they'd probably do it in the morning, so that would interfere with our budget retreat. So I call that to your attention. If they were to do that, would council be agreeable to make a full day out of October 1st and thereby free up October the 8th? And again, it's tentative. I don't have a firm commitment from the Utes, but we're trying to make it happen. I think it'd be pretty cool. It happened in 1912. I don't think it's happened since then. Council, what are your thoughts? Okay, Judith would be okay with that. Okay, John and Natalie. Nancy?
Is staff able to do it all in one day?
Oh, that's a good question. Denise?
Yeah, that's what I asked the mayor. We need to know that as soon as possible so I can let staff know and we can schedule accordingly. Right now, they've scheduled their half days. So I just need to know so that we can take action and get that scheduled. And we're trying to do a different format than last year because I know you guys want to have the opportunity to ask more questions. So we're really trying to limit the amount of time that we talk and give a very quick overview and do some things like that, and then allow the questions to take place.
Okay. And again, this is still somewhat loose. It's, I haven't been able to nail things down like I'd like to, but I wanted to give people a heads up. So if it's okay, let's think of that as something we can do. And hopefully the next couple of weeks, we'll get a firmer commitment from the Native people.
Mayor, the sooner we can get that scheduled, the better for staff, just so that they can plan accordingly. They don't have to hold 2 Saturdays open, but they can say, here's one. So it would help staff if we can make that decision sooner than later.
Okay, well, if there's no objection from council, I would say let's go ahead and do everything on October the 1st and let people plan accordingly. Would there be any objection to that? Put it all on October 1st. Yeah, so then we'd have it'd be a full day. We'd start at like 9 and probably hammer it out till 4 or 5, be a full day. But it'd just be that one Saturday and then we'd free up the next Saturday. Okay, so Denise, if you could let people know. And again, it was split up with different departments on different days. So you still have the morning shift for some folks and the others would have the afternoon shift if that's if you can make that work out. Okay, great. Denise, was there something else I was supposed to remember?
5 o'clock next week, we start in executive session. So the meeting starts next week at 5 p.m.
Be a little earlier, and that'll be a joint meeting with the URA board.
Correct.
Great, thanks for
Mayor?
remembering.
May I just make one comment regarding the retreat?
Sure. Mhm.
When will we be getting budget books?
We usually do about a week in advance. And so I'll have to check with Alex because we have a very tight schedule to get them. But yeah, we'll do, last year, I don't think you got it a week in advance,
Oh,
but
we
that's
got
our
it
goal.
the afternoon
Yeah.
before, which is why I'm
Yeah.
I'm bringing this up. I'm
Our-
just
yeah.
saying, if we can, I got mine Friday afternoon for the Saturday. So if we could, I know you're all busy, but if we could get a few days prior, that would be great.
Yeah, the year before, I think we got them to you a week in advance. Last year, we changed to try to save some funding. But yeah, I know, we'll work on that and make
Thank
sure.
you so much.
Great, thank you. Anything else for council correspondence? If not, let's go to the city administrator's report.
Just one item. Last week, there were been some complaints on the Cliff House floodgates, the noise. So the rubber pads have been put down. We're also looking at a way to lock the grates down so they don't move as much and still have functioning. So we're talking to the manufacturer on that. So, but currently it should be a lot quieter. So that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
My only update is the code rewrite or update, not rewrite. Right now, the committee is looking at the one that's compiled and really putting it together. Then city planning will be drafting the language to various boards and commissions through late April and September. And then we'll have an open house for the general public on September 15th. And then we'll be going to planning commission and moving forward with that. So our goal is to have it completed by the end of the year. Also, we're working on building some online comments. So like regional did last week, whenever they presented, and I immediately sent an email saying, can we do that for our code update? So we're looking and seeing what we can do with that.
Okay, great. It's a very nice idea. As I think back, I think the code rewrite's been talked about for 20 years or so. So this is almost like going to the Olympics, or it probably is like going to the Olympics. Great. Okay, well, we have, as I mentioned earlier, 5 executive sessions. So let me go ahead and read those. I'll ask for a motion to approve that, and we'll take a little break before we go into executive sessions. The first is an executive session to discuss the purchase or sale of property for public purpose pursuant to section 5.1B of the Manatee Springs Home Rule Charter. Additional details are not provided as they would jeopardize the potential transaction. The second is an executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop a strategy for negotiations, and instruct negotiators pursuant to section 5.1D of the City of Manatee Springs Home Rule Charter concerning the Colorado Springs Utilities Electric Franchise Agreement. The third, an executive session to hold a conference with the city attorney for legal advice pursuant to section 5.1C of the Manatee Springs Home Rule Charter concerning legal standards and procedures for an executive session involving a personnel matter, which lead into an executive session. The fourth item, an executive session to hold a conference with the city attorney for legal advice pursuant to section 5.1C of the Manatee Springs Home Rule Charter concerning potential litigation. The fifth, an executive session for a personnel matter regarding an employee or or an applicant for employment unless the employer applicant requests an open meeting pursuant to section 5.1A of the Manatee Springs Home Rule Charter concerning the city administrator. So we'd ask for a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Motion,
Second.
and we have a second. How do you want us to vote, Judy? Electronically or by voice? Okay, so we have a motion, a second. We'll vote electronically. All in favor of going into executive sessions, vote aye or vote green.
6-0 in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you. I would suggest we take a brief break while we go ahead and set up for the executive session. Okay, so maybe say 7:35, okay, like it's a little over 10 minutes. Thank you.